couple of years ago, I made a video essay on Everglow, my issue with the Everglow fandom at the time, and what I felt would be our best path moving forward to help Everglow succeed. It didn't age particularly well, but aside from that, I ended up unlisting it because I looked over the script and it was just all over the place. There were just so many ideas that were half-baked and disjointed that I just didn't feel proud enough of it to leave it up. I've since looked inward at the issues I've had with being a girl group stan in general, and exactly why I keep seeing the same things happen to girl groups over and over again. And the short answer is, it's misogyny. I know there's plenty of videos talking about misogyny and double standards happening in the K-pop industry, but I think that there's less conversation around misogyny in K-pop fandom spaces, or really, misogyny in fandom in general. I've started to see people with platforms deep dive into how people treat female fictional characters differently from male fictional characters, but even then, there's still a lot of excuses people make for their behaviors in fandom. One video essay I finally watched recently on this topic is Ella Pastoral's Misogyny vs. Shipping Culture, where Ella discusses why fandom seems to gravitate towards gay male ships and neglect female characters. And genuinely, every talking point in that video is something that me and my sapphic friends have been venting to each other in DMs for literal years. And I'm talking about this video essay despite it being about fictional characters, because so many of the arguments discussed in Misogyny vs. Shipping Culture apply to K-pop fandoms. And this goes beyond people actually shipping K-pop idols. We will touch on that though. I know RPF is kind of the elephant in the room in K-pop spaces, but it's a pretty big elephant. But we also know that parasocialism is baked deeply into K-pop culture, even more than the average celebrity fandom. And with that comes people treating K-pop idols a lot like they treat fictional characters. And with that additionally comes people treating male K-pop idols differently than female K-pop idols, especially since there is a culture around being a boy group stan or a girl group stan. Now, I will be honest, I am a bleeding heart girl group stan. Have been since I got into K-pop. I do realize that my perspective is going to be skewed, but I can definitely speak on my experiences and the experiences of my friends who are girl group stans and the patterns we have observed in how people treat female idols. I also have friends who stan boy groups who have observed the same things I have and can back up my claims. Hi, so why don't you introduce yourself, how long you've been a K-pop stan, what groups you ult, things like that.
Okay, hi, I'm Blue. I've been a K-pop stan for about 5 years, and I ult TXT and LE SSERAFIM, but I'm mostly on boy group Twitter. I have a lot of boy group mutuals, but I also watch a lot of girl group content on my own and listen to girl group music.
As a disclaimer, this is not a video telling you are a bad person if you're a boy group stan. Standing and listening to boy groups is perfectly okay on its own. The reason why I'm centering boy group stans, or people who stan boy groups in this conversation, is because girl groups have often been blamed for being the sole perpetrators of misogyny in K-pop spaces for years, while there is a narrative push that boy group stans are by and large not misogynistic. But the reality is that misogyny in K-pop spaces is a lot more prevalent and a lot less obvious than most people realize. So please, watch the entire video before commenting and understand that this is not blind hate towards boy group stans, but rather a critique and observation of patterns of behavior within K-pop spaces. And just because I am centering those who stan boy groups in this video, doesn't mean I won't critique my fellow girl group stans. Trust me, we have issues that bear addressing too. So, without further ado, let's get into the discourse. This brings me to the second reason why I'm making this video now, as recent events happening in the world of K-pop exemplify exactly what I'm talking about. When the Mama Awards happened, Baby Monster covered Golden from K-pop Demon Hunters, and I will be honest, I didn't like it. And I do think that people should be allowed to critique Ah-hyun's voice, or just not like the cover. But Ah-hyun being a girl 100% has an impact on how much hate she received, and the vitriol of that hate. And when girl group stans brought this up, I saw a lot of people complain that girl group stans are making this a, quote, gender thing. While it is true that male idols and female idols get hate trains from time to time, you cannot tell me that an 18-year-old girl got the entire K-pop fandom this upset when there are male K-pop idols who have sung just as badly, if not worse, who either got less hate or faced a lot less vitriol with that hate. There will be many excuses when a male idol sings off-key, that he had a bad day and the clip is being taken out of context. The wider K-pop fandom tends to give more nuance to male idols, and if there are negative reactions, they're often met with a lot of negativity right back. And I know this because I have been in K-pop spaces for over a decade, and I see this happen again and again. It is well documented, not just with K-pop idols, but with public figures as a whole, that it takes a lot less for a woman or girl to be criticized and harassed than a man. Now, am I saying that male idols who sing off-key should be witch-hunted, hung in the village square? No. Am I saying that if a female idol sings in a way we don't like, that she can't be critiqued no matter what? Also no. What I am saying is that the reason why this is a quote gender thing is that the default reaction of the K-pop fandom at large when it comes to girls and women is to assume guilt before innocence, an inherent lack of ability over a lack of practice, while with male idols it is more often the opposite. Another part of this type of discourse that I will often see is that boy group stans will admit that female idols get a lot of hate, but it's from girl group stans and not them. Now, I agree that girl group stans are behind some of the hate that girl groups get, and I will say that I have a lot of issues with some girl group stans in this discourse when it comes to rhetoric. While I do hate the "standing men is so misogynistic, but what do we expect of stupid fucking women" tweet, there are a lot of girl group stans that will antagonize boy group stans simply liking boy groups when this isn't the issue. And it's bad rhetoric because it easily allows boy group stans to poke holes into the argument about misogyny happening at all in our spaces. Because conversely, going back to this tweet, it is more often than not evoked by boy group stans towards girl group stans who aren't even saying anything remotely close. When I see a girl group stan criticize a male idol or criticize how boy group stans might be defending a male idol, one of two things usually happens. One is that boy group stans will usually assume that this girl group stan is a gay man who's performatively feminist while simultaneously hating other women. Now, there are girl group fandoms such as Orbits or Buddies that have decently sized portions that are gay men. But if we are talking about girl group fans who are involved in this particular discourse, it is mostly sapphic women or queer non-men. And it's not something they hide either. If you check the profiles of girl group stans criticizing misogyny in K-pop spaces, their pronouns and identity are very visible in their profiles. I think a lot of the reason why this assumption is made, despite the clear evidence for the contrary, is to create a straw man. There are misogynistic gay men on Stan Twitter, so it's a lot easier to deny accusations of misogyny when you have the person opposing you be someone who doesn't experience it, because what would they know? I also do think in some cases, especially when this hypothetical gay male girl group stan is called a quote misogynistic twink, that is an excuse to be a little homophobic. Like, let's be honest, we know what F word you want to put in place of twink. And it's honestly just unfair to gay male girl group stans who aren't misogynistic, because they definitely do exist, and definitely don't want to be roped into all this bullshit. The second thing that happens is that there will be a boy group stan, or often multiple boy group stans, saying, well, what about this screenshot of a girl group stan calling this idol a slut? What about this one saying this girl looks plastic? What about this one saying the same thing? That's the real misogyny. But why are girl group stans being asked to atone for the actions of every misogynistic girl group stan before even addressing the argument being presented? This is such an obvious example of deflection and whataboutism, and it's the fact that I see people do this again and again show that they genuinely don't realize that's what they're doing. But in some ways, I understand why. Why do you think there's this stereotype among people who stan boy groups that girl group stans are really toxic?
I feel like all K-pop stans, not everyone, but every type of K-pop stan fights and has toxic traits. But I feel like boy group stans only see girl group stans when they are fighting, either in fan wars with each other or when boy groups are on the opposite side of it. So when girl group stans are fighting with them. And it might be a thing of when boy group stans fight other boy groups, they're not thinking the entire time, boy group stans are so toxic, because they're not thinking about it as a boy group stan thing. They're thinking about it as a K-pop stan thing, versus when girl groups are fighting, it's because they're girl groups. And then, even though fighting goes on a lot with boy group stans as well, their community and boy groups are more worth it to them.
Misogyny is one of those isms that is so deeply ingrained into all of us that we often don't realize we are perpetuating it. And a lot of boy group stans are also women that experience misogyny, and that has led them to believe they can't perpetuate it themselves. And I think that they believe that girl group stans are the primary or only perpetrators of misogyny in K-pop spaces, because the type of misogyny girl group stans exhibit is the most obvious. Calling idols sluts and whores, pointing out plastic surgery accusations during fan wars, things that are objectively women-hating. But misogyny isn't simply hating women. It is the societal obligation to uplift men, to service their upward mobility while not doing the same for women. This is the kind of misogyny that I would argue is not only more prevalent in K-pop fan spaces, but has a bigger impact on the career of these idol groups than people realize. I think the first major thing I have noticed about K-pop fandom is that many K-pop fans are unable to talk about female idols without associating them with male idols. In 2006, there was a forum of Super Junior fans and the announcement of Girls' Generation's debut, calling them a female version of Super Junior. The reason why they were calling them this is purely because Girls' Generation has a lot of members, like Super Junior does. At this time, nothing was known about the group besides the members' names. It was a way of Suju stans to delegitimize Girls' Generation on principle, as a cheap imitation, even without hearing a single song. This isn't the only example. Dreamcatcher has been referred to as the female version of ATEEZ, despite having a vastly different concept and having debuted a year earlier. Girl idols will be called the quote female version of a male idol if they have a similar hair color, or share similar features. Xion is the female version of San, whereas Sohyun is the female version of Sunghoon. Rarely is it that a male idol is primarily known by the wider K-pop fandom because he looks similar to a girl group idol. And while these comments are usually made with the intention of complimenting these girl groups, the male idol is still subconsciously positioned as the original, and the female version his counterpart or copy. It shows to me a lack of ability to engage with the artistic works of these female performers without associating them with men. This also happens when female idols have close friendships with male idols. Earlier this year, there was an NMIXX Lily fan call that went semi-viral, in which the caller tells Lily that they have a crush on someone and is giving hints throughout as to who it is that imply it's Lily, only to have it be Bangchan instead. And while Lily laughed at this, to me it felt strange that someone would buy a fan call for an idol only to talk about an idol from a completely different group. I mentioned this on my Twitter and got a bunch of comments saying that I was reaching and that it wasn't that deep, so I ended up deleting it. But then, it happened again. A second Lily fan call happened where the caller asked Lily about Bangchan, and only then were there more fans who seemed to say that this was inappropriate. But this isn't the first time that people have brought up Bangchan to Lily and asked questions about Stray Kids unprompted. It happens in her live streams all the time. And there's an added layer to this example as well when you consider that NMIXX up until now have been considered a less popular 4th gen Big 3 group, while Stray Kids are one of the most popular 4th gen groups. Would you say that, from your experience, it's accurate to say that people who listen to both boy groups and girl groups often struggle to talk about girl groups without associating them with boy groups?
Yes. It's definitely my experience, especially standing both TXT and LE SSERAFIM, because both of those groups are very associated with each other. While a lot of people who stan TXT, they listen to both groups, but their accounts will be more dedicated to TXT, and they'll be talking about LE SSERAFIM the most in regards to them doing TikTok challenges together, and also just a lot of people who talk about Hia in relation to Hyunikai, I see a lot of parallels with the TXT Le Sserafim thing with groups under the same company. So like Stray Kids and ITZY, or like NCT Dream and aespa. And I'm sure there's a lot of parallels like that with the third gen groups. I've even seen it with like 17 and Twice, even though they're not under the same company. I see it's a lot of like, they talk about their boy groups in greater detail. Like they're talking about the variety show episodes that are coming out, and like they're able to predict how the members will act in the variety shows. They're like, oh, 17 should do this type of episode, and this member will do that, and this member will do that. And then the girl group discussions has more to do with like their bodies and their faces, their performances. And even when those things are positive, it never goes really beyond the surface a lot of the time.
And while many may think that this is purely a disrespect conversation and has nothing to do with misogyny at all, I must ask, then why does it disproportionately happen to female idols? Why is it that people will fixate on the perceived relationships that female idols have to male idols, while simultaneously not even liking the female idol in question? Everything I've mentioned thus far in this section comes down to people centering men in their media consumption. And by centering men, I mean the act of unconsciously treating men as more important and having them in the forefront of your mind, even when the topic of discussion is women. Again, liking men on its own, or being attracted to them, is not the issue. But on the topic of liking men, or should I say, men liking men, let's address the aforementioned elephant in the room. As I said before, RPF, or real person fiction, shipping, is a phenomenon in K-pop I've noticed people have reservations about. And I find that interesting because of just how heavily marketed and integral the fan service aspect of K-pop is, far more so than any other celebrity industry. And especially starting in 4th gen, K-pop fans seem to be reluctant to admit just how many people engage with the RPF side of K-pop, as well as how much they do themselves. I see so many K-pop fans who will make references to duos in K-pop in a way that is very obviously shippy. I've even met people who will denounce RPF up and down on their mains and then have secret fanfiction accounts. But this isn't a video about RPF as a whole, because the ethics of shipping real people is besides the point. What I am saying is that it is a much bigger part of K-pop fandom than people realize, whether they like it or not. And when we are talking about boy group spaces in K-pop, there are a lot of people who ship these guys together. There are many large, pretty open fanfiction communities for boy groups, far more than there are for girl groups. And I think this is an online fandom-wide issue of Achillean or men-loving men ships in fandom receiving more attention than sapphic ships, as discussed in Ella Pastoral's Misogyny versus Shipping Culture.
I had to ask, why do you think that, I'm going to go with Achillean. Achillean sounds nice. Achillean ships tend to receive more engagement than sapphic ships.
I mean, there's just the baseline element of masculinity. A baseline is more valued by society. I would hope that's not a controversial statement, but I'm sure a lot of people are going to be mad at me for saying it.
We're going to be in the comment section arguing. You know the vibe. You know the vibes.
It is just a factual statement, but I think at a deeper level that there is a specific aspect of how like sapphic love is only really desired by the broader culture or wanted to be seen when it can be heavily, fetishized and from a very male gaze approach. Whereas gay ships have this element of like, they're a little risque because people are weird about queerness in general, but they're still somewhat acceptable because frankly most people see men as subjects and see women as objects. To engage properly with sapphic ships would require them seeing women as more than an object that can be possessed, because they can imagine men both being subjects in a relationship, but they struggle, I think, to some degree in viewing women in a relationship as both, subjects. And so this is where you get a lot of straight people who will be like, oh, who's the man in the relationship?
I hate that.
Because they need that objectification, that possession. to be a part of relationships, to conceptualize the relationships.
The idea of men being subjects in Achillean ships is also why I believe that K-pop fans seem to view homosexuality in male idols as more authentic than that of female idols. For example, some of Only One Of's music videos were received pretty positively by queer fans as an authentic representation of queer love. But when it comes to this kind of representation in girl group music videos, there are usually more mixed viewpoints. I think the two big examples that I can think of that happened this year were Irene and Seulgi's Tilt and NMIXX's Spinnin' On It and Blue Valentine MVs. There are many K-pop fans accusing Red Velvet and NMIXX of fetishizing sapphic relationships for the male gaze, for profit. Now, I won't deny that, especially with these music videos coming from big three companies, that profit is always going to be a bottom line. However, that's the case with any K-pop company. And if we are looking at these two groups and their history with queerness and queer fanbases, there's less evidence for this being for the male gaze. In the case of Red Velvet, their fanbase has been female-dominated for years, and Irene, one of the two members of the Irene and Seulgi subunit, has a substantial Korean hatedom of male fans due to being perceived as a feminist. Additionally, Seulgi and Irene both have substantial female fanbases individually, with many of those being queer women who ship them together. Thus, it doesn't make much sense to me to say that this music video is for the male gaze when the makeup of the target audience for Red Velvet is female and a substantial part of that audience is queer. With NMIXX, their concept has consistently displayed themes of championing diversity, catering towards international fans and queer fans. More subtle sapphic themes have been scattered throughout NMIXX's lore even before the Blue Valentine comeback cycle. And in the lead up to this comeback, Mesh was released, which was a collaboration with internationally known Brazilian drag queen Pablo Vittar, the first time a K-pop girl group would feature on a drag queen song in history. Yes, drag queens famously very popular with straight men.
Now, you have made history being our first straight contestant.
Wait, what?
Right. Whoa, Maddie is straight?
With themes of queerness and rebelling against social norms being consistent in NMIXX's content, combined with collaborations with beloved queer icons, it's very obvious what kind of audience NMIXX's creative team wants to attract, and it's not straight cis men. So, with all of this information about these groups easily accessible, I have to ask, why is it that queerness in male K-pop idols is viewed as more authentic and catering to queer people, while in female K-pop idols it is viewed as inauthentic and catering to men? Do you think that there's a difference in the way that queer K-pop fans view queer-codedness in male idols versus female idols? And if there is, why do you think so?
I definitely do. And I don't think there's anything wrong with queer people seeing celebrities that they love or fictional characters that they love as queer. But there is a difference in the way people see women as queer and men as queer in general, outside of K-pop. Like, for example, biphobia, seeing men who are bi as gay and seeing women who are bi as straight going through a phase. And then there's also like a theory with why there's a gay accent with men and not a gay accent with women is that people see acting masculine as like the default human trait, but when you're acting feminine, you're like deviating from the default. And so when men have a vocal fry or speak in a more high-pitched tone, they are seen as queer. But this also happens with aesthetics. And a lot of the time, K-pop stans will talk about idols' gender expression, and they'll be like, oh, I just like love boy group idols' gender. And there will be very fun expressions of gender with boy groups, like the makeup and the crop tops and the outfits. But then they'll act like that doesn't happen with girl group idols when there's no shortage of women performing in suits or performing boy group songs or performing in a more masculine way. But it's just not acknowledged as queer as it would be with men.
These cases are examples of people not only unable to view women as subjects when they portray queer-coded characters in music videos, but also simply not bothering to learn about the circumstances of these girl groups, and viewing them as mere extensions of their companies rather than artists, as objects. This is also why you will often see queer female boy group stands call cis-male idols lesbians, or portray them gender-bended in shipping content to make them a lesbian relationship. Because in order to view sapphic relationships wholly, they need their connection to someone they subconsciously view as a subject. It is this internalized misogyny and queerphobia that makes it easier for them to view a generally gender-conforming cis man as a lesbian than a real-life woman. And there are likely aspects of Orientalism at play here, but I am definitely not the person to be speaking on this, so I'm going to link this essay discussing this topic in more detail. When we look at the way K-pop fans treat female idols in relation to their male peers, there is a common through line in everything I've mentioned thus far. K-pop fans simply don't care that much about female idols. And you may look at streams and album sales of female idols and think that this is not the case, but I'm not talking about casual musical popularity with the general public. Rather, K-pop stans, those who navigate online and offline fandom, overall don't seem to have the emotional bandwidth for girl groups the way they do for boy groups. K-pop is built on parasocialism as much as it is built on music, and most people who involve themselves in K-pop fandom are parasocial to some degree. This is often in the form of consuming behind-the-scenes content, variety shows, live streams, and vlogs. The fan might go further and use messaging apps, fan signs, or other avenues that allow a fan to connect on an emotional level with the idols behind their favorite songs. Boy groups and girl groups alike have this sort of content, and in 4th Gen and beyond, filmed content is usually given subtitles by the company for international fans to enjoy, which previously would have required a dedicated fan subber. But in wider K-pop spaces, there is generally more attention given to this content from boy groups. And subsequently, there's more in-depth discussion and emotional connection made with these boy group idols as a result. Circling back to fictional character fandoms, we see a pattern emerge where male characters usually have bigger fan bases, and more engagement in fan bases than female characters do, even with characters within the same franchise. In these fandoms, people often use the excuse of not connecting to or caring as much about female characters because they are badly written. Now, while some K-pop content is scripted, you can't use that excuse with K-pop idols because not only are they real people, but we are given the same amount of information about these female idols' lives as we do the male idols. And yet, we see the same patterns reflected in K-pop fandom. Do you think that people engage with girl group content as much as they do boy group content?
No, I don't think people watch girl group content as much as they do boy group content. You can tell by the way people talk about boy group content and the way they just seem to have a deeper understanding of the members themselves and the way they analyze the things the boy group members do and how they're able to predict or how they want to predict what the boys will do in a variety show content. Like one time I saw a tweet that was like, oh, 17 should do rug cleaning content, and then people started chiming in on how it would go, and I see a lot of that, like how they think it will go when a boy group does something because they've seen enough content for them to have these answers. And then with girl groups, it's more focused on just like listening to the music or learning the dances. While this does happen with people who do engage with the girl group content, it's not nearly as much with boy group content.
I understand as well as anyone that many of us are adults with lives, and some of us don't have the time to devote equal attention to every group we stan, especially if these groups produce so much content. But if this was the case, then why is there a bias towards devoting that time and energy to boy group idols? This bias is even present in K-pop memes, which sounds crazy, but hear me out. I'm going to introduce the concepts of what I like to call inter-fandom memes and intra-fandom memes. An intra-fandom meme is a meme that needs context of the fandom it's from in order for it to be funny. The "oh now I'm holding this pain" meme from Dreamcatcher is a great example of this. It's a lyric from Dreamcatcher's song Deja Vu that's often used by Dreamcatcher fans in situations where they feel emotionally hurt or sentimental. If you're not a Dreamcatcher fan, then it's not going to be funny to you. It's purely referential. Another example of an intra-fandom meme is a fandom-specific version of a non-K-pop meme. If you're in the fandom, you're probably going to use your faves version, but any other person outside of your fandom is probably not going to use it. Conversely, an inter-fandom meme is a meme whose humor doesn't rely on you being in the fandom it's a part of. Whether it be someone saying something objectively funny or making a weird face, these memes are funny at face value. I think the best example of this in recent memory in K-pop is Ning Ning is the maknae. You don't have to be an aespa fan to find the meme funny, as the whole joke revolves around a non-Korean person speaking ignorantly about Korean culture, and eventually it just became brain rot. By the nature of not relying on you standing the group, inter-fandom memes tend to spread further and become more popular. And something I've noticed in my time in K-pop fandom is that girl groups have more inter-fandom memes, while boy groups have more intra-fandom memes. And while inter-fandom memes are more widely known and used, they can also result in people knowing the idols in them as purely memes and not much else. I apologize for using Lily so often as an example in this video. We could honestly make an entire video of the weird way K-pop fandom has treated Lily specifically, but that's a whole nother can of worms. Lily has a lot of well-known quotes, and while people know her name and could say, oh yeah, that's the girl who says raw capitalism, and I've never hid a Jew in my basement before, you find a lot less who know much else about her, and far less who actually stand her and her group. And this has affected how people have interacted with her, where people will go to high touches and reference her sound bites, or spam her comments with skibbity toilet just to make her say it. Which, sure, Lily is really funny, but when the topics of her lives are her wanting to discuss films and books she finds interesting, analyzing the themes of art she enjoys, and showcasing her singing talents to the world, it's very obvious that people aren't taking Lily or other commonly memed female K-pop idols seriously. Whereas with the intra-fandom memes common in boy group fandom, the humor for fans comes not just from the meme being funny, but from it being from an idol they already like. People can look at a meme of Bangchan and find it funny, but also engage seriously with his music, his opinion, his looks, his personality. Little fun facts about him that we learned from a live stream 2 years ago, in parts or all at once. He can be multifaceted, something other than a meme. And that is not to say that this can't happen to boy group idols, where people only see them for their viral moments and not engage with them beyond that, but it disproportionately happens to girl group idols, and there's a reason why. People can look at a male public figure and see him as a person worthy of learning more about, and understanding past the content he produces. In a male-centered society, it's a lot harder for female idols to gain that level of personhood among K-pop fans, where people will engage with them beyond their 15 minutes of fame. Especially when they have male idols that they already know and love to go back to. So, why does any of this matter? All this talk about misogyny in K-pop spaces, but it's the internet. It's not that deep, right?
Your Curse was pointed out many years ago that most groups don't last over 7 years. The first girl group that I'm aware of that lasted over 7 years was Brown Eyed Girls. Nowadays we do have Twice and Red Velvet and A-Pink and Mamamoo to a degree, and G-Idol will be there in May. A long time it was just a lot harder to maintain a strong, stable fan base for 7 years for a girl group. Because typically at the end of the 7 years they'd want to be soloists or actresses, which is why the whole catching the actress bug thing comes up a lot. Meanwhile, companies try to push boy groups to maintain fan base through enlistment and beyond. There was a study done back in 2018 that I wish I could find again, that said girl group fan bases usually last between 2 to 3 years, while boy group fan bases last 5 years plus. Kind of explains why companies try to really push to maintain boy group fan bases more. It's not to say a bunch of boy groups also didn't disband this year, just a whole lot more girl groups that debuted in 2017 are leaving us now.
All that we have discussed thus far, viewing male idols with more nuance when they make mistakes, viewing male idols as their own people and not just a counterpart to someone of another gender, viewing male idols as the subjects in a relationship, engaging with boy group content and seeing male idols as multifaceted, this is the end result. K-pop at the end of the day is about profit and being able to get the most out of these groups for as long as they can, because even big companies struggle to maintain a large number of groups. And when you have the choice between a group with great album sales and streams but less fan engagement, and one group that may not chart as well but has a lot of consistent, loyal fan engagement, you are going to choose the latter. And the latter group is more often than not a boy group. Think about why you see the phenomenon of K-pop companies using their profits for their big girl groups to fund their new boy groups. With boy groups, these companies are in it for the long haul, because even when these boy group idols enlist, these fans will still be there. Even if they don't chart as well, think of all the money they're making up for that with fan sign mass buying, concert ticket sales, plushie lines, season's greetings. On top of that, you have the free advertisement from fan communities to new potential fans. Fan artists, fan fiction writers, editors, creatives, and translators. The actress disease exists because these companies stop caring about these girl groups along with their fandoms. Many of these female idols do not have college degrees. Some of them dropped out of high school to become idols. What else are they going to do with their careers? The stereotype of being a girl group fan and only ever meeting boy group fans IRL also exists for a reason. Because people care more about boy group idols, there is more incentive for them to cultivate fan spaces for them than there are for girl groups. There's also a reason why during this video I've put so little emphasis on direct monetary support, mass buying, or streaming. Because I think that K-pop fans, especially those from 2020 and beyond, underestimate the impact fan communities and fandom have on these K-pop groups. Full disclosure, I have been in K-pop for almost 12 years, and in that time I have bought less than 20 albums, and half of those were from group orders. I have gone to 4 K-pop concerts total, and that's from the last 5 years. I have spent relatively little money on these groups because I didn't have the money or avenues to do so. But I've spent my time in a ton of smaller fan communities for girl groups, and I can tell you that these are fans who are sticking with these groups for life. Even the ones who aren't streaming all the time, buying votes, are going to be supporting these women even through all the inevitable hiatuses. As much as I, in the past, have had a rocky relationship with Orbits, I think that Orbits are the textbook example of what a strong fan community can do for a girl group. The impact that LOONA had on K-pop fandom was astronomical for a group that only had a couple of wins under their belt. The memes, the fan art, the in-depth lore discussions, fan fiction even. LOONA had so many people who didn't just stream their songs, but actually liked them. And while LOONA had the benefit of not having many label mates, I do believe that the LOONA boycott wouldn't have gone as well as it did without the fan base willing to put in the work to make it happen. Hell, the reason why I think most of LOONA even went back to the idol industry is because of those fans keeping them alive in the K-pop cultural consciousness. I've noticed in conversations when girl groups disband that the reason boy groups stick around longer than girl groups is that girl group fans spend too much time fighting and saying boy groups should disband, while boy group fans are supporting the group and buying merch. But in the case of Everglow, the group in the screenshot, they never got a light stick, never got much merch, never got a season's greetings. All things that their junior boy group Tempest did get. Additionally, their company was known for underprinting albums and never reprinting them. And Everglow happened to be a group with basically no consistent fan base, which is the reason why I made that Everglow video in the first place. So while girl group fans saying they need boy groups to disband is unproductive, it doesn't come from nowhere. It's a misplaced anger towards a real issue of the K-pop community not caring about girl groups, and the companies responding in kind. And I will say that there are issues in girl group fandoms that prevent these fan bases from growing. I think the reason why aespa fan spaces have grown so toxic is because there is this infestation of solo fans who are at the forefront of these fandom fights, and there aren't a lot of large accounts I've noticed that are looking at the big picture and seeing the influence they have on my communities, and that these aren't just one-off trolls causing issues. Additionally, so much emphasis is put on streaming numbers and social media metrics, despite the girls themselves not really caring that much about charts, and more on their own improvement as performers. But this just loops right back around to the K-pop fandom at large being unable or unwilling to do actual fandom community building for girl groups. And this drives people away from girl group fandoms because people don't view them as being worth it. How do you think that we as girl group stans can do more to build our fandom communities?
I definitely think there's a lot of people doing a lot of great things. Making threads about the members, meta-analysis, making edits, silly ones, sexy ones, funny ones, like cute ones, memes, and even clipping, like adding clips from content to Twitter of things that make you laugh. I just say we should be doing more of that and try to shift more of the conversation when we're talking about these women to something more of like who they are as people not just like performers. Just like it can be hard when you know that a lot of the reasons these things are happening because of misogyny. It can be hard to openly love these things, like openly love girl groups, especially in a very like wholesome way, especially when you feel like there's like a lot of toxicity going on, or people just hate your group because they are women or aren't as interested. I say just you have to put yourself out there so you can meet other people who are putting themselves out there, and then you can make more girl group friends. Or if you're a multi-stan and you like boy groups and you have a lot of boy group stans and you like girl groups as well, probably watching girl group content with your friends or getting into girl groups together, or getting your friends into girl groups you already like, just so that there's more community happening.
I know that in an age where we are more aware than ever of the dangers of stan culture, that engaging more parasocially with girl groups is a bit of hard sell. But as long as we consider ourselves part of K-pop fandom, there's always going to be some parasociality there. I think that we can still be critical of the ways in which we stan idols while also having genuine love for them. I also think that while fandom is going to be toxic in some way, shape, or form, that we can alleviate some of the issues in our communities by understanding our own internalized biases to make fandom at least a little bit of a better place. And if you're a boy group stan who's watching this and decides to take the dive into girl group fandom, I'm not going to hold any of this stuff against you. I want nothing more than for more people to see what I see in these talented women, and we all have to start from somewhere. This video has honestly been a long time coming. I started writing the script for this at the beginning of the month, but truthfully, this is the product of emotions that I built up over years of seeing girl group after girl group disband, and having no one to talk to about this other than a few close friends. I honestly don't know if I'll make a video like this again, but I am nothing if not opinionated, so who knows. And a special thank you to my friends who have been supporting me and listening through my rants, especially Blue, for taking the time to be in this video. So if you enjoyed this video, learned anything from it, please leave a like and a comment, and I don't know, stan Dreamcatcher.